And I said, how long have you been in the mines? He said, I've been in the mines 9 years. And I've had 3 people in the last 2 years hang themselves in a fucking dollar of all places.
That creates the conversation that actually gets guys going, okay, I'm going to take a look in the mirror and go, fuck, maybe I need to do something to change it.
What was the biggest thing you learned by chucking on a pair of gumboots and walking from Cairns to Gold Coast?
I got to the age of 40 and I thought, I fucking had enough of this. I got to do something like this.
You're tuned into the Better Bloke podcast. I'm Matty.
And I'm Rob.
We're just a couple of average blokes who started a charity with one simple mission: to fuck off suicide as the leading cause of death for Aussie men our own age.
We talk shit, ask the big questions, and chat with guests that have been through the ringer and have come out the other side with a story that's worth hearing.
Some episodes will hit you in the feels, some will fire you up, and others will just give you a laugh and remind you you're not the only one out there winging it.
We also run events, connect with the pros, and build communities, all with one goal: build better blokes without all that fluff.
All right, let's get stuck in. You might have seen Walk with Morgz popping around on Facebook or on the news or something like that, and we got the man himself here with us today. How you doing, brother?
Yeah, great. Thank you for having me, brother. I'm doing absolutely fine now that I've made it home here on the Gold Coast. Yeah.
A bit of a trip home.
Yes, an emotional roller coaster, I'd like to say. More wet weather than has been fine, but yeah, I made it in one piece, which is always good, yeah.
Wet weather wouldn't have bothered you, though, because you're wearing your boots.
Oh, I filled these buggers up with water heaps of times, It was just torrential rain early. I struggled, actually. I was thinking of giving up after 10 days in, to my 1,840k hike. I was 10 days in, then only a couple hundred k's down and had enough, It was just torrential. It was just, everything was wet, it was terrible. And I thought, geez, it's got to be, if I can get through 1/3 of this trip, I said, I'll be all right. And then I worked at a couple of butcher shops, and the second butcher shop I worked at, I met a bloke, and he, halfway on my way to Townsville, it took me 5 days to walk to Townsville from Cairns. I get a message, and he told me that I saved his life, which sort of inspired me to keep going, and got blokes like, who struggle every day. And I thought, if I can do this for a couple of 3 months of my life, I said, fuck, I'm going to be winning. And that's exactly what I've done. Put the head down, ass up, and hooked in. Yeah, it's been an amazing journey.
Let's take it back a bit. So for those that may not know what exactly that you did, which they're obviously living under a rock for the last couple of months, what was your challenge?
My challenge was, I started with no social media. I've always been a butcher for 30 years. I've been a butcher. And I wanted to incorporate butchering into mental health, and I teamed up with Mentalk, our charity. And in the butchering game, everybody in our game, so we're the lowest paid trade in the world, $27 now, which is pretty good compared to what it used to be, 7-8 years ago when the laws changed. We're number 1 for tradesmen in alcoholism, due to the hours we work was 6 till 6, 6 days a week. Number 1 for drug users, which is, really, really common. So the stigma around butchering has always been, you get pissed, and you get drunk, you don't go home, you spend your money on the punt, you gamble, like, just the cycle is vicious cycle. And since COVID sort of changed, the stigma of butchering had become funky again with what we're doing now, podcasts. COVID was really, really good for small businesses and butchers, especially butchers, because the bigger players couldn't handle the demand, so they had to go back to the smaller shops where mince and sausages and chicken breasts became available, and it sort of helped elevate butchers, again, because in 20 years we've had 84,000 butcher shops around Australia closed, and that's huge numbers. But when you speak of the butchering industry, it's quite big also. So I always try to incorporate my walk with Morgz into what was real personal to me, and I experienced it. So infidelity is huge in the butcher's thing, or marriage breakdowns, broken families, because of the hours you work. But, you become an alcoholic because you sit in the shadow of, your biggest fear, which is, a cycle. You didn't really want to speak up. You're just told, especially us, 20 years ago, if there was a problem, if we were sick, we were told, get to fucking work, You had a starting time at 6 o'clock. There's no finishing time. So over the years, I've seen older butchers, I've lost them, to suicide. Like our industry, the butchering or meat industry, is number one for suicide, and it's a figure, because it's a big, like when I say our industry, like you got truck drivers that deliver the cattle, you got the farmers that breed the cattle, you got the people that work in the abattoirs, and then you got the wholesalers that sell the meat to the butchers, and then you got the butchers. So we've got a really, really big variety when it comes to the meat industry. But we're number one for suicide, which I found really, really disturbing, because I experienced something down there, and I thought, well, I'm going to try and incorporate something with butchering and something meaningful. So I decided to fly to Cairns, the length of New Zealand. I wanted to fly to Cairns, walk in my Gumboots for men's mental health. No social media. I started with nothing, just from scratch, and no money. Flew up there just with a swag, no itinerary. The men talked all. I was a bit crazy, but mental health hits anybody, anytime, anyway. Your life could be good, and in a flip of a coin, you're out on your ass. And so that's what I decided to do. Hey, leave the comforts of my home and my family, and fly to Cairns and walk through North Queensland North Queensland home.
Yeah, what a challenge! I think a lot of the things you spoke about in terms of drug use, alcoholism, family breakdowns are pretty common pitfalls for men.
Yeah.
And the butchering and meat industry sounds like it's kind of one of those industries that pushes guys to
their limits.
To their limits, the early mornings. I've heard similar things from sort of the chefing industry and stuff like that. Yeah. So do you think when you started that walk, it created a conversation, a voice that people were like, shit, I haven't seen people talk about this, and that's why it started growing?
And that's the groundswell that we created, and I just wanted to be open. So I played a bit of rugby league back in the day, so I played for the Warriors when they first started, and I come over here to play for Penrith Panthers. So I've been in that. I've always been held in pretty high regard, and as I've got a bit older, I had a couple of butcher shops in Sydney, and when you get a bit older, you tend to grow up. But unfortunately, when you're in that cycle of alcohol, drugs, gambling, you can't wait. And everybody, those that have been in, especially gambling, like I couldn't wait for a Friday, Saturday to come around so I can have a punt on horses. Make my money Monday to Thursday, save it up, don't pay my rent, and go play the GGs on a Saturday. Because you get down to the pub and everybody's your mate, and jugs back then were $7. It was a cycle that, and it's a vicious cycle. I've seen it with gamblers now, and until I took some accountability and a bit of ownership on what I was doing, I got to the age of 35. I had plenty of money in my bank, just fucking blew it on the punt, and I started clouding that by drinking. And then when you drink, you go out, and then you get on the drugs, which is was real common for us. It was all part and parcel of growing up. I got to the age of 40 and I thought, I fucking had enough of this. I got to do something like this. But after it was too late, lost my long-time partner, who sort of helped me get to where I was. So I was out on my ass again, and that's when I decided I need to wake up and I enjoy a drink. I don't drink to fucking shit the bed, or I don't drink to to spend my money anymore. I drink to socialise and give myself a pat on the back, because I've just done 10, 12 hours at work, and that's the difference now. I'm 48 this year, and took me 30 years, working years to finally wake up, and I'm one of the lucky ones. There was fellas in my position and friends of mine that chose the other way, which was suicide, and I didn't want to do that. I did think about it, but I didn't want to do that. Didn't want to go down the track. So that inspired me to do what I've done, and I didn't expect it to get to the level it's at.
I think half of the with what you were saying, with it took you to get to 48 before you actually decided, okay, yeah, shit, I'm gonna go and do something, or even 40 before you went, yep, all right, I need to pull my head in and get my shit together. There's a lot of guys that are even older than that still don't have it. So I think from you discussing the journey that you went on, and the fact that you went, maybe you did it a little bit later than some people, or not as late as others, that creates the conversation that actually gets guys going, okay, I'm going to take a look in the mirror and go, fuck, maybe I need to do something to change it?
100%. And sometimes it's only a small conversation, but sometimes it's all they need, especially men. So I'm not a counsellor. I found myself being an advocate, which I didn't know. I just knew I just had my mind set on flying there and just doing this and just seeing how far this will take me. And it's made my journey so easy. But after 4 weeks of just rain, I didn't care anymore about the rain. I was always intrigued about the next stop, about someone else's story. And as I got further and further along, they just got more deeper and beautiful and meaningful, and it actually paved the way for where we stand today. So
I want to talk about the stories and the motivation in a little bit, but off what you were just talking about with the grog and the pun, I want to talk about, for lack of a less psychological term, maladaptive coping mechanisms or behaviors. So that's
what kind of maladaptive?
Maladaptive. It's a real thing. So
yeah, I'm not doubting it is, but do you want to break it down into my terminology so I know what you're talking about?
If you didn't interrupt me, maybe I will.
Oh.
No, so it's essentially when you take a behavior like drinking or gambling to start covering up a problem.
Yep.
Right? So like you said, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, you have a beer after work. That can be okay until it becomes maladaptive, which means essentially it's a bad way to cover it up.
Gotcha.
Right? And it gets worse and worse and worse.
I like that word.
This is where men fall into a trap all the time. We are a lot more likely than women to fall victims of being substance abusers.
Yep.
And then this is a self-fulfilling prophecy of going down these deep rabbit holes with depression, anxiety, things like that. So do you see that as an issue in not just butchers, but the men that you've had discussions with along the way?
And that's the biggest, probably the biggest thing I've learnt on the way is the ones that do talk, that have talk. And like I said to the boys, I met 434 people. I wrote everybody's name down because I'm always intrigued, and I always take something away from what someone has said to me. And everybody I've spoken to, or even, because I don't ask the question, I just let them go. So people find it easier to speak to a total stranger than they do their own friend and family. And I always ask them after, because like I said, I'm no counsellor. So people just opened up to me and told me about stuff. And then at the end of the conversation, I said, what made you talk to me, They said, we find comfort in talking to you, Morgz, we don't know you. And the biggest thing that everyone said, every men said, was that we're afraid of being fucking judged by their own friends and family. That's the biggest thing. We're afraid of what our mate's going to think of us or what our family are going to say to us. And that's the reason why they don't speak to them. And that's a war that podcasts like these, or people, Better Blokes, or even Men Talk, that's the biggest war that we need to try and break down for our men, because they're all scared of being judged. Me, I don't give a shit. I've just gone out, opened it up. I've ripped people off, and I've, apologized to them, even your own family, lied to them. I've been deceitful to the ones who loved me, but I've apologized to them. I've took ownership, and I don't want people to fall victim to the rope because of it. And that's why, I took accountability. I apologized to all my friends and family, and we move forward. So my past is not my past. My past is somebody else's future. And I just want to try and move them away from that. My past belongs there. I'm looking at what I can do for someone who's in my position now, or who has been, or they're taking those steps into what I've done. As a gambler, as a drinker, not so much substance user, but again, it's that circle you get yourself into, because you feel good when everybody else is on a high, because that's what you aim for. You cloud that mind. You just want to be on a high all the time. And then, like me, I could lose thousands and wake up with the biggest hangover. Haven't paid my rent, haven't done shopping, no fucking petrol in the car. So I've got to see the ring the boss. Can you put a couple $100 in so I can, get to work? And that's our cycle. That's how That's how when you get yourself in trouble, that's what you chase every fucking week. And it's because we don't want to be judged by our own friends and family, you know. So I say to the ones that I've spoken to, I said, so either you get judged by them, whether it's harsh criticism, truth, or they're crying over your coffin. You know, so that's, I know what I'd rather do. You know, I'd rather just open up and be there, be those ears if you have to be, or, you know, like I don't know everything, but I know, you know, I'm at an age now at 47, well, I fucking know right and wrong, you know, but I'm still learning. And that's all you can ask.
So many blokes that we speak to, like regarding sort of on the punt, that fear of judgment is something that continues them on that same cycle.
Yep.
And I've spoken to a few of them that have actually gone through, you know, like doing Gamblers Anonymous and whatnot. And part of their steps were that they had to go and tell their mates, like, hey, no, like I'm not going to come. This is what I'm going through. Every single bloke that I've spoken to that's had those conversations with their mate said that their mates turned around and went, fuck, had no idea you had an issue with it. Like, yeah, we're going to be supportive of you and we're going to help you through this.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Every single one of them has said that. Yeah. But it was just, they took that bit of a push to get them to that point where they went, I need to have that conversation with my mates. If they're your mates, they're going to do everything. They're not going to judge you.
You get that with the boys that try and get off the piss as well. So, yeah, if a guy says he doesn't want to come out, you might throw some banter around. Come on.
Come on, you pussy.
But every time, and this has happened a lot of times to me, I'm sure you guys as well, if a guy says, I think I've been hitting it too hard, I don't want to go out, I don't want to get on the piss. Every single time you're like, man, respect that.
Yeah.
Like if he's identified a genuine issue in himself, a good mate's going to 100% back him.
Well, I think we've lost that stigma, so it's changed. It's changing. Like it's changing. Like men now openly speak a bit more now. That's what I noticed. They find it easier to speak now, which is and again, it's podcasts like these that they listen to without saying nothing that give them the courage to come out or reach out to their mate or family, and that's what you want if you want to raise awareness. You just want the reaction of one person, you know, that it's going to help, even if it's just one a day. Fuck, that's 365 people throughout the year we've helped, you know. That's all you want. You just want to make that change for one person. Like I said, I've been on that walk for 12 weeks and I changed the path for 7 men who told me they were going to kill themselves. And I think, fuck, and that blew me away. You know, I was like, wow. You know,
it's not even those 7 men that you've changed, though. It's like it's their families, it's their loved ones. So there's like the ripple effect of what you've done from that challenge is so much more than just those 7 people.
Yeah, there's studies to suggest that each man we lose to suicide leaves about 120 people affected.
Yeah. So that's huge, you know. And I'd like to have a look at I don't know the stats on the suicide rate now, but it is ceasing. But, you know, even as late as last week, I was up there working in Brisbane and the brother, one of the workers, the butcher's, his brother, you know, committed suicide, you know, because he couldn't see his children, you know. He had a break up with his missus and 6 weeks ago, and you know, 5 weeks later, he's their father's not around anymore, which again is a stigma that happens all the time. But that's another topic there that we can talk about. That one for especially those broken families. It's always a hard one. That one, broken families, and I know I've got 3 daughters myself that you know, I didn't see them. I didn't raise them at all through their early childhood. You know, it wasn't until they got of age where one of them moved over here at 14, and now they all live in Australia with me now. But you know, I missed out. I missed out them growing up because I made the bad choices. You know, it wasn't because their mother. I tried blaming their mother, but it wasn't their mother's fault. It was because I was making the bad decisions, and I had behind the bottle and in the punt, you know, all just, you know, chasing that thrill of, you know, we'll do this next week again. And it's, you know, and thankful, you know, my girls still love me. They still love me even more for it now, which is another big reason why I decided to do the walk with Morgz cause as well. Yeah. So.
Fuck, they would be proud of you.
Oh.
So proud of what you were doing. I'm proud of what you're doing.
And that's, you know, that's sort of, now that I'm home, you know, I got overwhelmed yesterday. I went and met with Mentalk, and I just need a couple of hours to myself just to chill out a bit because, fuck, my phone, you know, when people, you haven't seen for 10 or 20 years tell me they're proud of me. Fucking, I cried, to be honest. I just had to give a couple hours to myself. And I spent a good half an hour crying. I fucking haven't cried for years. But it's just the emotion that comes with, I fucking did it. You know, and I haven't done it for myself. I've done it for, you know, not only men and women. You know, their partners have reached out to me like, you know, you've changed not only his life, you've changed my life. And fuck, it's like rapid fire. It's gone crazy, you know. And that's why I'm sitting here, not even finished my trip yet, talking to you blokes, because that's how great I feel about it. It's amazing. It's amazing the love you feel when you don't really know the people or you haven't seen the people. It's what we want. It's what men, what I'm feeling right now is what I want every fucking man to feel every day. Just a little bit of love and being told, you know that, you know, by someone that I love you. Like all of our friends now, when we're on chatting with all our mates who play golf with, every time we finish, I love you, brother. It's gone like crazy, and we've been doing it for maybe a year. And it's got catchy now. It's not later, brother. It's no, I love you, brother. And that's all we need as men. We just need to be known that we're fucking loved. You know, and sometimes we put ourselves in a position, but, you know, it's we've lost that stigma of it's, you know, it ain't weak to speak anymore. More men are coming out, which is fucking fantastic, which is what we want. As groups and as mates, as a father, as a brother, as an uncle, you know, that's all you want. You just want people to speak openly, you know, and all you got to be sometimes is ears. And I've never been a listener, but I've been a fucking listener for the last 12 weeks, and it's just opened my eyes. My life ain't that bad compared to what's out there. And I thank those people that have shared all their fucking stories with me. It's been fantastic. I love it. You know, I've loved it and I've embraced it. Like I said, I was a bit overwhelmed yesterday, but did a post this morning and looked on it. I did a post last night, looked on this morning, had like 460 comments from friends and family. And that's only through Facebook. And that's, you know, and that's, I don't have any social media. Started with no social media, but the ride in the last 12 weeks is like I'm shooting up out of space. You know, it's fucking crazy.
It's inspirational, I reckon. And I think that comes from a place of relatability. You're able to sit here, put your hands up and own, like, I fucked up a little bit in my life, but there is redemption.
Yeah, 100%.
There is things that can change. And if I can do it, you guys can too. And then encouraging the message of talking, all that sort of stuff. That's what's inspirational.
But some of their stories inspired me. They reckon I'm inspirational. Fuck, I'm only walking fucking in Gumboots, and, you know, I get to see us, not even Australia, fucking cane fields and crocodiles all the way up north there. But I get the opportunity to listen to stories. So I could tell you a really good story that blew me away.
Let it rip.
Yeah, let it rip. So I started in Cairns, and I made Townsville, Burdekin, which is Ayr, Bowen, Airlie. And when I got to Airlie, I ended up on the radio. It was already 4.5 weeks, 5 weeks by the time I got a little bit of airtime, right? Just started getting a little bit of a ripple. Then I made the news, and by the time I got to Gladstone, I'd already been on the news. So I said to this lady in Gladstone, and I said, "Hi, how are you doing anyway?" "Good." Kept tripping down, got to Gympie, into a place called Maryborough, you know, and this was about nine odd weeks into my trip, and all I heard was, "Morgan, there's someone here to see you." I walk out in front of the butcher shop. There's this real big fella, Bill. Bill's 70 odd. Shake his hand, "G'day, Bill." And then I reached in to give this lady just a big hug, and I don't know what overcame for me to do that to this lady. I just gave her the fucking biggest hug, like it was my mother or grandmother. Those sort of deep, meaningful hugs, right? Stood back, and she says, "Morgan, my name is Vicky Baker." I said, "Hi, Vicky." And she says, "I love what you're doing." And then she showed me her left arm, and on her left arm, she had a portrait of her son. "This is Greg Baker." She said, "This is Greg. He committed suicide last April. Left behind 2 girls. And We didn't see it coming. One of his daughters found him hanging in the shed. And then I said, "Oh fuck, I'm so sorry, Vicky. I said, I don't think any parent should bury their children." She said, "No." She said, "In this one here," and she showed me her right arm. And on her right arm, she had a portrait of Anthony, 35. So Greg was 25, Anthony was 35. Anthony hung himself 10 months after Greg did, at the age of 35. But Vicky, the mother, found him hanging off a fucking treadmill of all places. She had a treadmill. So he could have easily just stood up, right? And she said, "Morgan, what you're fucking doing is amazing." And I said, "Vicky," and this is where I'm 9 weeks into my trip right now. I says, "Fuck, I don't even know what to say to you. But I thank you for coming." And I said, "I'm going to share your story if that's all right." She said, "Absolutely." She said, "I want you to share the story." So I walked out of work and I put it straight. I went straight on my Facebook and I just shared the story and it went fucking ballistic, right? I think it had like a couple hundred shares and, like what they do. And because it was raw to me, and I just spoke openly about how this lady walked into the shop. Then I get a message on my phone when I'm finished. She said, "I just saw that story with Vicky Baker." And her name is Morgan. Morgan Keeper's her name. She said, "And I've got a son to Anthony. And we've seen your story." So Anthony was Vicky's other son. She said, "This is Arlo's his name. And we'd like to come down and meet you and donate to the cause." I said, she said, "You served me in Gladstone and I wanted to tell you about my husband." So I'd already served her at Gladstone. She never said nothing. I've come down to Maryborough and served the mother-in-law and happened to share that story that, and she's like, "I wanted to tell you about Greg, my husband at the time." And she said, "Fucking," and it was just so emotional to have both those ladies at that time tell me, and Morgan give me a speech this long, and she's like, "I can't believe that, I wanted to tell you, and I can't believe that my mother-in-law come and spoke openly to you about it and your story we shared." So by the time it got landed on the news, and it just erupted from there. That's how powerful, meeting people with no expectations, which everyone has a story, what they can do for not only yourself but for people around you that's surrounded by you. So that story was probably one of the couple that was really, really close to me. I got to meet not only the mother of these two boys that committed suicide 10 months apart, but also the ex-partner that had a son, and they came down and met me, which was fucking, it was brilliant. I've been running ever since. I've been on cloud nine ever since. Like, rain hasn't bothered me, blisters haven't bothered me. It's just been inspirational to know that, people openly speak about, men and women, to me about, their troubles, and that's all I want. That's all I wanted from it was, just raise a bit of awareness for men's mental health, and it's fucking erupted. So yeah, that's the story.
With some of the stories that you've heard, like we had a brief chat downstairs and you were telling us a couple of them, but you're in a similar position to us where, like, you're not a professional in this space. You're just a bloke that wants to go out and try and do some good shit, which you are. Has there been any stories that you've had to have a chat to other guys yourself because you're like, fuck, that hits me like really hard, and you're not sort of like, without being a trained professional, even the trained professionals have to speak to other people, but there's some stories that just go, yeah, I need a bit of a debrief after this.
Yes, and I lucky I did have I've got Keenan and the boys there to because there's, like I said, the further I got down south, because it wasn't so much up north, like was good up there, but obviously the more exposure we got, like, TV, and then Facebook blew up, and the more harder it got. And some of them I'm not prepared to tell yet, because I needed to be surrounded by good friends and good people, because they were heavy, brother. Like, they're heavy. But at the same time, now that I'm home and I asked him, like one I met earlier again, I've asked him if I could record what he was saying to me. He's like, Morgan, I can't, because I've never spoken to anybody about it after 53 years. And I said, you mind if I tell you? So he said, absolutely. And again, this is where I knew, fuck, this is bigger than just butchers, So I thought when I started, I interviewed a fella in the mines, and just sat there and just 3 minutes, I think. I asked him, how's the mines? How long you been in the mines? And he's like, fuck, for the 3 minutes, he's like, there's not enough of this out in the mines. And then I was like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, it's there, but you're a pussy if you went there and went down that avenue. People chose. And I said, how long have you been in the mines? He said, I've been in the mines 9 years. And I've had 3 people in the last 2 years hang themselves in a fucking dollar of all places. And one of them hung himself before he had to come back to work. That's how much they fucking hated it. But that's how much they couldn't speak about it. And I thought, this was the very first fellow I interviewed. I thought, wow. I said, this is maybe just a fluke. And as I got further, and then I got lift by a truck driver. Oh, and I was like, whoa, I got blown away. And he said, what are you doing out in the rain? And I said, needed to get across the Seymour River over there. If anyone knows, between Cairns and Townsville, there's Seymour River. And just after I crossed, a couple of days later, the bridge got washed out. So I could have got stuck there. Anyway, so I hopped in the truck with this fella, 67 k's down to a place called Ingham. And he goes, I love what you're doing, Morgz. And I said, oh, thanks, I appreciate you. And he said, I've got 5 siblings. Like just a normal conversation. I said, oh, that's good. I said, I got, 12. He has a bit of a giggle. He said, my dad died at the age of 7. He said, I'm the second oldest. My dad died at the age of 7. I said, oh, shit, sorry, brother. And he goes, no, I fucking hated my father. And for someone to have that much hate after this so long, I thought, Jesus Christ. And I said, oh, when someone says they lost their father at 7, you think, first thing you say is sorry. There's no hate, and it's to belt my mum up, and I thought, oh. And I've lived that. New Zealand was normal for young kuliati or fucking, people knock over a woman was fucking normal. But I just let him rip. And he said, I said, right. And he goes, yeah. He said, so a single mum with 5 kids moves back to Sydney. First bloke that showed interest in my mother. She hooked back up with him. He was happy to take on five kids. As his sister was 9, he was 7. He had a 6-year-old sister and 2 younger siblings, two brothers. But for the next 9 years, they were all raped by their stepfather. Moved back up to Cairns. And this fella, John, he's a truck driver. He's now 61. He said, I have not spoken about this to anybody. He said, Morgan, you're the only one I've ever spoken to about it. So the older sister cried wolf, and she got of age, right? But the stepdad ended up getting charged, but he got killed in jail, which was something he wanted. He loved that he was no longer here, but he hated that he didn't serve justice, if you know what I mean. This is coming from somebody who's been, molested by the stepdad. But when the sister, his older sister, cried wolf about it, ended up going to jail, none of the other kids were questioned. So he only got charged for the sister. But it haunted him, and still to the day, like I said, 53. So he's 61. He said, Morgan, I've not spoken to anybody in 53 years about this. He said, I don't know why I'm telling you, but I'm telling you. And I asked him openly, you mind if I share a story? He said, absolutely. And he fucking pulled over his truck and he just cried for about 15 minutes. And I can't console someone sitting in the truck driver. All I did was put my hand on his shoulder, and he said, that's fucking 50 plus years of trauma. And I said, is it a release for you? He said, I'll take it to my grave. He said, but what you're doing is fucking amazing. And that right there was enough to say, oh, fuck. If this bloke's been living with this for 53 years, surely I can walk in my gumboots, 1,500 in the rain, hail or snow, I can sort of do. So that inspired my trip. So that was only 10 days into my trip. And that's what I got. And then obviously the further I got, the more better more couple of real heavy stories I'll share a bit later on. But yeah, some of those are only, a couple of stints of what I've had to absorb. And I think I've done a great job of it. Like I said, we're not counsellors, but I found out in the open, early mornings walking, 1 o'clock in the morning I walk, and it was a release, And then raining, I used it as a cleansing, and then to the next town, start again, new stories, and yeah, it's been fucking beautiful. Beautiful.
That's a heavy burden to carry for 50 years.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like you said, like I've only had to carry it for less than 11 weeks, and that poor bloke's carried it for 53.
It's almost horrifying to know that all these people you might walk past day to day are carrying that sort of weight on their shoulders.
Oh, it's unbelievable. It's crazy.
That goes back to, people's ability to speak. And especially he's an older gentleman.
Yep.
He comes from the older sort of mentality where it was weaker to speak.
Yep.
So I just hope we can inspire some people to not do that, because there's no need, there's no strength in holding on to that for so long. Like I wish he did get that off his chest earlier, and maybe he lived a life without that burden. I think it's important to.
Well, I don't think back then it wasn't class. So I grew up in New Zealand, and even to be gay at school, I'm only 47, but if you were gay at school, you got a fucking hiding, which is terrible. It was terrible, but that was normal. You weren't allowed to be gay in New Zealand. And that's how we were brought up. Then as I got a bit older, I got to Auckland. I moved to Auckland and then went to a Māori crowd, and I fucking loved the gay community. They're fucking funny as one of the funniest. But I felt sorry for them. For decades they were just beaten up for no reason. And I just think now, like I said, I'm no counsellor, but now that I'm a bit older, like Keenan met my good mate Renee Drew just an hour ago. She's married to Anna. I'm good mates. Like, love them. Like, I love the community. But back then you weren't allowed, and I think same with John. Like, there wasn't enough avenues back then for them to talk to. Either, and again, we're not. I'm not qualified to speak of what happened 50 years ago, but I know what happened 30 years ago, and I think I've done enough to speak about that open, in which I think men now, my age, middle-aged men, they appreciate that someone is coming out and speaking openly about it, because, we just got to break that barrier down of being judged, for something that was out of John's hands. Like he didn't fucking know what was happening. He was a kid, and then that's the biggest thing for those people who are traumatized by that. They've got to live with it. And all we want to be is an option for them to come and see us and talk to us. And I think by creating safe spaces like, a podcast or what Men Talk are creating, we're heading in the fucking right direction for men to hold their head up fucking high, and let whatever's out on your chest. So, I'm not all for that. It's weak to speak shit anymore. Fuck that. That stigma's gone. Your fucking mate, your brother, you fucking love him. Your old man, your family members, like, you fucking love them all. Whether done wrong by you, you still love them. They're still part of your life. They're what paved the way for the person you are today.
I think a lot of the reason that you had so much success with guys wanting to speak to you, and we spoke about this with, guys wanting to speak to strangers, it's not just that. You come across as like, you've got this aura that just, people would just want to speak to you. Like, you're a friendly bloke. You can tell that you've got that relatability where, like, you've been around the traps, you've had your own struggles. So guys can tell that. And I think it's very much what you put across, plus obviously then you doing the walk, because everything's tied together. It's just you as a package has made this perfect storm of being an ear for so many blokes that maybe everyone has this stigma around blokes, like, oh, blokes don't talk, blokes don't do this, which is bullshit.
Yeah.
Actual bullshit. But it takes the right person to get blokes to talk. Blokes aren't just going to speak to anyone. You need that relatability. You need a whole bunch of other things to happen before they actually open up.
Yeah. And sometimes, especially in our industry, sometimes it takes them to have a couple of bottles of beer before they say something, which is okay too, you know, because, well, like I said, especially amongst the butchers. But I met 434 people. I'm pretty impressed by that number because I counted only yesterday. I was doing some book work. But I met 275 butchers, and 265 of them had a fucking story. Like, just came up and just, and I was only there for one day sometimes a week, or depend whether rain or how much work they had on. So my cue was I turned up to a shop. I worked, all my wages went to our charity. I didn't get paid. Fellas had gumboots on there. People come in, and he said, I worked at Dawson Road in Rockhampton. Went to this butcher shop in Dawson Road. In walks this fella. He goes, "Kia ora, bro," which in Kiwi means hello. And I looked at him. I was like, "Oh, kia ora, bro." And he gave me a hongi. So when you give someone a hongi, people always say, "Oh, how come you touch each other's noses?" Because when you meet a stranger, you meet him equally. You don't care if he's a millionaire or he's on the streets. When you meet someone, you meet him equal. That's how we say hello. That's why we do a hongi. That's what a hongi means. So this one, he gave me a hongi, and I said, "I'll cheer you, but where are you from?" Some TI, brother. I'm from Torres Strait Island. I said, "Oh." He said, "My best mate was a Māori. We buried him last year. Brought him $100 notes and put him in the fucking gumboot." He said, "I'll just come here, brother. I live on the other side of Moran Bar. Drove in here on my day off, threw $1,000 into the gumby. That's for the charity." Gave me a hongi, and he said, "What?" And this was Good Friday. So Thursday, he said, "What are you doing tomorrow, Good Friday for?" I said, "No." He said, "Oh, come get you wherever." He said, "Where you staying tonight?" I said, "I'm right tonight." Come pick me up, took me to his family. I met his whole family. They were singing Kiwi songs and he's full Torres Strait Island. I just loved the culture. His best mate was a Kiwi, and he lost him to suicide. Yeah, and I thought, fucking, what a bloke, you know. And I want a bloke like to drive 6 hours to, you know, just to come give me a hongi, you know. And that's where I knew. I thought, Jesus, we've touched something here. I've scratched the surface, especially in the butchering industry, and it's blowing up. Like fellas down south as Melbourne, you know, Darwin, like Perth, they all want me to go to their shop, which I just think is fucking crazy. I didn't think it was going to get to that level. I just thought, oh, I'm just going to do this. I'll quietly tick along, but I've made a fucking racket all the way down, and that's what we want. We just want to raise as much awareness as possible, and that's what we've done, and I've accidentally done it. Yeah.
So we're talking a lot about, you know, the destigmatization of the conversation, not being too proud to speak, and I think society as a whole is doing a pretty good job of promoting that. The problem that we see is that the same guys that will have the conversations like we're having now still feel that when they get into that dark hole, and until they get a point of access, running into you in a truck. He got access to you accidentally almost. Yeah. So until there's access to an avenue where they can feel secure and safe to get that word out, we continue to see guys falling, should we say, victim to that stigma. Even guys that are well aware that it's not weak to speak, hold tight. So what do you think we can do in terms of providing like more space, more access so that guys don't feel that?
I think you fellas are on the right level here with podcasts. If you speak openly about stuff, right, and I only done it on Facebook. I just spoke openly the fucking truth, what happens in the butcher shop, and butchers and people around the butchers relate to it. So I only thought I was going to target, you know, a certain level of butchers, but fuck, was I wrong? You know what I mean? So, and that was just for speaking openly. You know, like I said, I was no, you know, takes or doing this or doing that. I just went up there and I just spoke about it. And then, you know, when your phone is blowing up, you know you've done enough for that bloke to open up to you, if that makes sense. And I think I think men openly speaking about their own troubles helps fellas that listen to podcasts, or helps somebody sitting at a table by being openly speaking about it. Like it's, you know, I don't condone anything. Like if you want to drink, you drink. If you want to gamble, you gamble. But I'm not one to sit there and say, oh, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that, because that's what they don't want to hear. They want to know that I fucking work 10 or 12 hours a day and I'm going to have a couple of beers with them after work. You know, if we're going to get in the pub, you know, we're going to play Keno, we'll put $20 on a horse, because this country was built on gambling and fucking drinking. Every time you watch a big sporting event, sports bet, fucking twoies, fucking you. This country is built on gambling, so they love that the men gamble and drink. They love it, this country. But we've only just started seeing the effects of it from the last 50 decades. You know, smoking sort of gone. They've gone to see the young fellas doing a bit of vaping, but smoking was a filthy habit. But you know, everything. And like I said, I'm no counsellor, but fucking government loves it when you fucking smoke. Government love it when you go and buy beer. You know, they love it when you gamble, because they know you got to go to work next week and fucking pay your taxes. They know. They know the cycle. So they plaster. We watch Origin. You watch the Origin at half time or there's a try. Fucking first thing, sports bet.
I turned it off at half time.
Oh, me too. Okay. We won't talk about that. For my mental health, that one's... And I went to that game, right? And I got a couple of tickets there. So here's me. I fucking get up them. And I'm one of those blokes, you know. When it comes to the Broncos in Queensland, I'm fucking right in there. But yeah, I had a couple of beers and got too smart that I had to turn my phone off for a few hours. They wouldn't give it to me, but yeah. So that's, you know, like I don't condone anything. It's just as long as everybody's okay, you know. If everyone's all right with it, you know, we can sit here and have a beer. Everybody wants a beer, and that's good. As long as you're good enough to drive home to see your family, see your missus, or take your dog for a walk, or you know, you got enough money to buy your shopping or pay your rent. You know, you do what you like. You do what you fucking like with your money, and that's what a lot of fellas don't say. No, you want to go and fucking drink, you go drink, you know. You want to go get your bag, you do whatever, long as your family's safe, long as you're all good here, long as your mate's good, you know, everyone's good.
As long as it's not a maladaptive coping behaviour.
I've got to learn that fucking word.
Yeah, maladaptive, I forgot about it.
Yeah, no, I tried to think about it before, but I can't say it.
No. Yeah, it's a big word, and that's the problem with psychology. Like, it's all like these massive, hard to understand concepts, but they're not hard to understand.
Maladaptive.
It's just the words.
So you go.
Okay, I got that word now, maladaptive.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, I say, what's the mean, Morgan? I say, oh no, you have to ring them.
Maddie, tell this.
It means don't have too many beers. That's what it means.
Too many beers here. Well, I think we tend to cloud, you know, we tend to, you know, we use things to cloud them, but that's okay too, because, you know, everyone has a bad day, you know. I've stepped with the homeless people up there in Townsville. You know, the homeless was quite big, and I wanted to experience it, and got to talking to a couple of homeless fellas. Stepped under the bridges up there, Townsville, and I thought I was like bushman, you know. I can do this, cuz 3 days, fucking got eaten by those little midgie sandfly things. Really uncomfortable for the next week, but I done it, you know. Everybody thought I was mad. Everybody was you know, sending some money for a hotel. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to have a bit of a struggle, and I did. A couple of days there I got hungry. I only had jerky to eat and water to drink, but you know, there's people that on our streets that don't fucking eat for days, you know. So that's what I went and done, and walked and got some blisters, but could I done it? And all the things, I didn't expect it to get to the level that it's gotten to. It's reached some really good heights, and I think it's only just starting.
Just in this small conversation that we've had, the fact that you didn't expect it to get to that level says how good of a bloke you are. But just me hearing your story, it was always going to get to that level just because of who you are as a bloke. Like, you are so genuine and authentic that it was never going to go any other way. As soon as someone gets to meet you, you light up that room with, I don't know, like your presence. You make people feel comfortable. Like, I feel very comfortable around you right now.
I worked in 25 butcher shops, and every fucking single one of them offered me a permanent job. And the owners, and when after I've gone, they're like, those young fellas never work like that, Morgz. Can you come back? You fucking work like a rocket when you're here. And that's what they said. You just fucking come in, you lit up them. It was a fresher breath of air for them. You know, even the owners and operators and bosses, they're like, fuck, you're mad. Like, this is fucking great. You should keep. I said, I'm not fucking. Everyone's going, you should walk south to New South Wales. I said, you know how motherfucking big that state is? And like, you know, thinking, but everybody down there, it's been fantastic, eh? But, you know, every one of them said that, and I appreciate them, eh? And I didn't, like I said, I didn't expect that was going to happen. I was just, you know, on a whim. I thought we'll pick up a few dollars here and there. Because, you know, working and like I didn't get paid, I wanted to go to the charity. And the last three, and this is how big it's got, the last three big butcher shops I worked at through T-Grad, straight at our charities. And that speaks volumes for what the work we've done just in the last 10 weeks prior to going there, right? So,
What was the biggest thing you learned by chucking on a pair of gumboots and walking from Cairns to Gold Coast?
I learned to fucking listen. You know, I don't tell them their answers to their problems. I just open both ears and just listen to their conversations. And they tell their problems. They tell you their problems by themselves. You know, and that's the most engaging thing about something. People who struggle, you don't need to have their answers. You just they'll tell you, they'll just tell you their problems, and then they'll tell you the answers. If you listen to them deeply, whether they have a gambling problem or drinking problem or problem with you know, the ex-wife and children, you know, they'll tell you their problems, or even in their dark spaces, they'll tell you them. But then on the back end of it, they'll tell you what they're doing to improve them, which is the most fucking rewarding thing in a conversation. It's the best feeling. It's like it just blows my mind. And the more people I talk to, the more intrigued I get. Like that's given me a thrill. It's a thrill of the punt again for me. It's waiting for that next person's story, which, like I said, that's the new punt in me now. That's the new chase I'm after, because it's so satisfying knowing that 20 minutes or 10 minutes or 5 minutes spent with that person is going to change their whole demeanor in life. You know, and I just think, fuck, I'm a part of it. We're a part of it. That's what it's about there. So listening to learn was the biggest learning curve I learned on my journey.
It's a much healthier addiction than having a punt.
100%.
That's a very good thing to be like addicted to chasing.
Yeah, and that's like I said, even here, like I was only here for a day, 3 people spoken about it, and fuck it. It honestly, it puts me on the biggest high, knowing that those 3 people are gone away happy. Yeah. You know, I'm like, far out. And there's no alcohol involved. It's just talking. You know, you don't have to get drunk to talk or have fun. You know, normally you go to a party or a rave, you know, and you're 20 deep and you wake up, shit your pants and fucking, you know, and you think, oh, I got a headache. But this high is it's real. Yeah, like I said, it's really, really.
It's a spiritual high. Like you feel like it's, I know the thing that having you explain that, then it's good to hear you talk about that, because when we do our community events, or like I'll have a chat to a bloke in person, you get this, it's almost like it's filling your purpose inside. And like, you know, when you help someone that much just by listening, it gives you this feeling like you're like, fuck, what I'm doing is, it's almost like it's worthwhile.
Well, it is worthwhile.
It is worthwhile. Yeah, bro.
No, well, no, the feeling, it's because you know you're helping them, but it gives you this. It's hard.
It's called purpose.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. It's 100% purpose.
And you know, it's become contagious with me now. And I've, like I said, even coming home to my own friends and family, and it's just, you know, they cried and I didn't want to. They just cried, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm alive. Like, I made it. Like, you sit there and let me tell you what happened in Gympie. Let me tell you what happened in Townsville. Let me tell you what happened in Noosa. You know, it's every town like has a beautiful story. Every shop had a story. And even customers. Like, I was surprised the amount of customers coming. Like, one of the mayor's wife up there in Ely Beach, like a mayor's wife, like, wants to come and talk to a fucking butcher. Like, you know, and it blew me away. It still does. Like I just get yeah, like I get so in awe of people speaking openly to me about it because it's new to me. And it's, yeah, like I said, it's become very contagious now. And I just see it's like pushing a button on a poker machine. I can't wait for the next story, the next spin, and that's what it feels like for me. That's where I'm at the moment in my walk with Morgz journey, which I find fucking fascinating. I could sleep on the streets for the rest of my life, knowing that there's worse off people in the world than me. And that's the most grateful and the gratitude I have from doing this walk with Morgz.
We're running short on time now, and it sounds like you have stories for days. So we might have to revisit this.
We'll ask them, see if they'll get us back.
And no doubt you're going to continue going out there and finding more stories, meeting new people. It seems like you are a bit addicted to it now. Is there anything you have coming up that you want to talk about?
I don't really know. I've like I said, it's I might just take a couple of weeks to settle down, and I'm going to fix. I'm really going to have a look at all these stories that have come with me on my journey, and I want to pick Cairns and what happened in Cairns as a segment, and then pick Townsville, what's happened in Townsville.
Yeah, you might have to start your own podcast and one story per episode and really talk about it and unpack it.
I think it's too many bright lights for a podcast. It takes up too much time, but I don't know what's on the next agenda for Morgz, but when I do, you fellas will be one of the first ones to find out of. I'll be happy to come back and let you know the next stage with Walks with Morgz, or what happens with Mentalk and myself. But thank you very, very much for having me. It's been a fucking blast, and I hope this has helped you as much as it's helped me, and I thank you very, very much.
Yeah, well, hopefully it helps some of the people out there listening. So thank you so much for coming on. And it's probably worth noting to the guys watching, we obviously spoke about some pretty heavy topics in this one. So if it did bring anything up for you, head over to our website, betterblokeproject.org, and we list heaps of people you can talk to. If you don't have anyone, you can actually go and have a yarn with yourself.
Awesome. Thank you, Zane. Good luck to everyone out there. I know everyone has a story and everyone struggles. Yes, but it's not sad to say anything, and it's not a bad idea to just check up on your mate and just tell him you love him. I reckon that's the new slogan we go with. Like, just got to tell your mate you love him, because sometimes in life that's all you need, a little bit of love, bro, and fucking makes everyone's day.
Love you.
Thank you very, very much, boys. Love you, boys. Thank you.
Love you, brother. You're an inspiration.
Thank you.
Be better. Thanks for tuning in. If you got anything out of this, be sure to show some love on whatever it is that you're listening on, and follow us across all our socials.
If you want to know more, head to betterblokeproject.org, where you can learn about the programs we deliver, find out about upcoming events, and donate to the cause of building better blokes.